Morning, everyone, and welcome to the Midlothian Safer Communities Board. We have a few new faces here this morning, so I will go around the room and ask everyone to say who they are. Starting with myself, I'm Councillor Joe Wallace.
Hi, Ali Perry, Local Senior Officer for Midlothian, East Lothian Scottish Borders for the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service.
Hi, good morning. Tom McGrath, Group Manager for the Midlothian area, the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service.
Morning, Tracy Curran from Victim Support Scotland.
Rosie Kendall, Community Safety Manager.
Kevin Anderson, Head of Customer and Housing Services.
Margaret Brewer, Statutory Service Manager in Midlothian.
Paul Kingham, Garrison Staff Officer for Edinburgh with responsibility for the barracks in Glencoast and Married Quarters.
Good morning, John Beresford from the Scottish Police Authority.
Councillor Ian Baxter.
Councillor Peter de Venk, Midlothian East.
Jill Imrie, Divisional Commander for Midlothian, East Lothian, West Lothian and the Scottish Border.
Kenny Simpson, Local Area Commander for Midlothian.
And George Wilson from MVA, representing the voluntary sector in Midlothian.
Fiona Young, Chief Officer, Community Justice Authority.
Steve Cairns, currently with Lothian Borders Community Justice Authority.
Hi, I'm Catherine Johnson, Councillor.
Thank you.
You just observed it.
Do we have any apologies for absence this morning?
No, there's no apologies been intimated.
Maybe we could lodge the apologies for those that have still not turned up to support us and regret, certainly from my point of view, the fact that our comrades from the Labour Party are still refusing to join this board. They're critical in the media. They call it a box-ticking sham, and if they came, they would realise it's far from that.
Thank you. Order of business. If there are any declarations of interest, and if we reach the item and you feel there is a declaration of interest, you can declare it at that point. For governance and for approval of the minutes of the meeting of 19th of May 2015, page 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. They approve these minutes. Thank you. I can't remember who's first up for a kicking this morning. Is it the police or the fire brigade? Is it the police this morning? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We'll just continue with the nation's favourite sport. Okay, so obviously Chief Inspector Simpson will go through the scrutiny report in detail for members. I just wanted to start with just a couple of comments about national context, and, you know, joking apart, Police Scotland has come in for quite significant negative headlines, and I feel it necessary to make mention of that here, because that's the context within which we're all working, and to provide members with some reassurance that certainly locally our focus, as is the case across the country, continues to be on service delivery to the communities, and reassuring the public that the service continues to be totally committed to delivering the local priorities and meeting the needs of people living here and working here and visiting the area. I think I mentioned last time that there were really positive signs about the National Police Service putting more and more emphasis on local. So myself and colleagues in similar roles, in responsible for divisions, have increased autonomy to decide on local priorities. And one of the things you'll see when we come to the scrutiny report is quite a different format, which I know Kenny has consulted on, and certainly we would welcome feedback on how people feel this report assists, but it is in response to comments previously about how good the fire service report is, Ali. And we are trying to put some context round about the figures and provide some graphs, and hope that those will be helpful. But as I say, very much welcome comments if we can improve it further. And just the last thing to say, we spoke before about a change to the deployment model that came in March of this year, and I gave an undertaking that there would be a review after 6 months. So that's currently ongoing, and you will be asked what your views are on any change, if you've been aware of, and what your feedback is on that change 6 months in. And again, I would give you confidence that if the feedback indicates that something different needs to happen, that will certainly be something that I'll be taking on board. So then I'll just pass over to Kenny Simpson for the scrutiny report, and we can both take questions.
Okay, good morning, folks. As the boss alluded to, there is a new style report, and the one bit of feedback we've had already is that the font size is slightly too small, so we'll take that on board and ensure that that is increased for future meetings. Turning to the report itself, I think by and large it's a fairly positive message and a fairly good start to this fiscal year. Going through the priorities, and priority 1, the tackling substance misuse. Again, it's good to see the continued drop in alcohol aggravated crime. The one bit that I will draw your attention to, and it's probably unsurprising to those, is that almost a third of all our alcohol aggravated crimes are recorded within the Dalkeith ward, which is the only ward really within Midlothian of which there is an over-provision. Has been identified for there, and I also am fully aware as well is that it's the place in Midlothian where there is a nighttime economy, but overall the picture in terms of the alcohol and the part that it's playing within the crime related within Midlothian continues to drop and is well below our 3-year average of 12.8%, so a positive picture there. Turning across to the tackling substance misuse, and you'll see, and we apologise for the lack of the stop and search figures in there. You'll be aware, through the national media, that we are developing a new database, and that we are hopeful, certainly come the next report, that there will be some figures in there to report on. But I can give members some reassurances that stop and search still continues to be used, targeting the right people at the right time, in the right place and for the right reasons. Priority 2, protecting people, and I know there was a bit of discussion about this at the last meeting. You'll see we're just slightly above where we were previously, so certainly I know, Margaret, it was a slight concern for yourself in regards to the huge increase that there had been over the previous 12 months. Is that I'm pretty confident now that it's sort of levelling out. The new database, the new awareness, is that I'm pretty hopeful that we'll continue to be on par, and there won't be the spike that you've seen over the last 12 months. But the heartening thing is that everybody is aware, they know the valuable part that this has to play in identifying vulnerable people throughout the communities within Midlothian. And I know there's a lot of work ongoing, just to generate and raise that awareness amongst all our partners who are now contributing to that as well. So again, a positive figure for us. Reducing violent crime, this is a positive message, I have to say, in terms of that, we are on target, and we're continuing to see a drop in terms of the violent crime aspects of it. can hear the domestic side of things, the compliance rate in domestics. The bail reviews continue to be robustly enforced. Very, very few aren't met within that 24-hour time frame, and I can give reassurance as well for those that aren't. We don't just forget about them. That continues on to ensure that we actually comply past that 24-hour period. In protecting people with the rates, again, it's a positive figure in terms of the detection rate for domestic crimes. We were sitting above our target is 75%, which is very much in line with what we were the previous 12 months, and shows just how serious we take this particular priority within Police Scotland. In the reducing violence and the priority 3, this is the one where it is a healthy picture. We're down again, and when I think of over the last, certainly since I've been here, it's been this continual trend that we're going down in violent crime, which I can't say is replicated everywhere, but it's a very positive message, I have to say, in Midlothian. And a couple of things that I really want to point out to you is round about the drop in serious assaults. You know, 4 serious assaults in the quarter, the first quarter of this year, as opposed to 9 the previous quarter. That is a really, really good message, I have to say. And in terms of overall violence is down within Midlothian, and along with that continue. In terms of what we're doing, one of the measures, and we've tried to put in, there's lots of partnership measures in there, and what we're doing in terms of the antisocial behaviour and violent offenders group, working very, very closely with our partners in Midlothian Council and elsewhere to actually be targeting those that are causing unrest and angst within the Midlothian communities. And one of the very last one I want to highlight there is that the active early engagement with violent offenders released from prison. It's one thing that we do. You know, we are identifying individuals who are being liberated from the prisons, and we're actively working with them in terms of trying to address that behaviour when they come back out, in the hope that they will not re-offend. The stop and search figure, unfortunately, is very much like the drug misuse one. We'll hopefully have figures for that in future reports. Moving on to making our roads safer, and again, I think we were. This year was always going to be challenging. When I think back to last year, where we had a particularly good year in terms of reducing road casualties, this year hasn't started the best. We're sitting there, three more, unfortunately, in terms of the KSIs, the killed or seriously injured on the roads in that first quarter. You'll see we've given a wee bit of rationale around about it. Unfortunately, we've had 1 fatality. We managed to go through the 12 months last year without a fatality on our roads, but we've had 1 fatality this year on the A6094 road, the Howgate to Ledburn road, and that's also seen 2 seriously injured road accidents as well. I'm alive to the fact that my road policing officers are looking at this particular stretch of road in conjunction with the partners to see if there's anything further that can get done in terms of engineering or enforcement or education in a drive to try and reduce the casualty figures on there. And the other one I want to draw as well is that we've seen two children seriously hurt this year. Well, I will say both of these were pedestrians, actually coming out from behind parked cars. There's been nothing at all attributable to the driver. It's just been a bit of carelessness on their part, and unfortunately both have been classed as seriously injured. But what I will say is, in terms of serious injury, I can say it's a fracture that they had as opposed to life-changing injuries. Of our seriously injured figures that we have in there, I would only describe one of them as being life-changing. The rest have been fractures of some sort. And whilst it's still not nice having a fracture, it's far, far better in contextual-wise than having life-changing injuries are. The two children who were hurt, that didn't come from the same area. They're not linked. They're not for the same school. So in terms of actually looking at some prevention work, was there stuff that could be done round about it? We didn't think it was proportionate. It was just one-off and isolated incidents, but it's a watching brief for us, I have to say. The second part of making the roads safer is actually tackling and looking at people detected for dangerous driving, and you'll see we're certainly we're taking quite a robust stance this year, with the number of people who have been detected for dangerous driving has risen quite significantly, from 6 the previous year up to 12 this year. what I want to try and put that into some context is that we're just not going through a bad spell where everybody's driving dangerously within Midlothian. What we have had for a couple of months is we've actually deployed an unmarked traffic car within Midlothian, looking at key routes and what we call the triangle virtually within the Midlothian area, the A701, A702 and A703 in parts of these areas there. We've had a deployment of the unmarked traffic car, and what it does do is it certainly picks up driver behaviour, and it's something we're going to continue over the coming months, so we get a clear message through to those who are either residents within Midlothian or those who are passing through the area, is that we'll not tolerate bad driving, and they will be dealt with accordingly. So a thanks to my colleagues in road policing for that. Moving on to priority 5 and reducing antisocial behaviour. Again, it's the first one in there where it says increase the detection rate for hate crime. Again, we're on target, and whilst it says it's a significant jump for the first quarter last year, I have to say the figures for the first quarter last year were fairly disappointing, and we're now sort of on par with what we would anticipate there to be. And just in relation to hate crime, it'd probably be remiss of me, and people who were listening to the radio yesterday will be alive that it's the national campaign started yesterday, the national hate campaign through there. This week, the first week is on disability, and again, we will be involved in a number of different initiatives throughout Midlothian over the period of that campaign. The whole driver behind that is we want to instil the confidence within these groups to come forward and actively report crime, and we'll show just how seriously we take it, and we'll not tolerate that type of behaviour. Overall, in terms of reducing antisocial behaviour, disappointing. Again, we've seen an increase, but I suppose when I've spoken to my predecessor, I need to balance that and be careful and balance that against a sort of continual reduction in antisocial behaviour over the last 5 years. But that's not to detract from the fact is that we do have some challenges. Our hands in it, and the reasons in there specifically make mention of the youth disorder in the Dalkeith ward in recent months. For the board, I can give assurances that we do have plans in place. We've had a number of operations in that area, and we will continue to do so. We are working again closely. We're partners, particularly in the community learning development and our youth groups within that area to try and actively encourage the young people to start utilising the services that are there. And just having came off the back of the local licensing forum there on Friday, we're also looking at taking on a sort of underage drinking, a CAP model, which it's only been piloted, I think, in Edinburgh, and we're looking to try and pilot that within Midlothian as well, move that forward to tackle underage drinking, with the hope that that may well have the spin-off benefit of reducing incidents of antisocial behaviour. But I can give members assurances that, again, there's lots of work ongoing with the partners in trying to drive that back down again to the levels that it was in the previous 12 months. Tackling serious and organised crime. Again, we're on target for both of these figures. And I suppose for us, the big bit for me is that we're now raising awareness, and we've done quite a lot of work with Midlothian Council, and I know they're establishing their own group, their integrity group within Council, and just the part, and we're looking to try and expand that further with our partners, and the part that all of these individuals can play in tackling serious and organised crime. It is on our doorstep, let's make no bones about it. We do have serious and organised crime groups that are operating within Midlothian, and there's a lot of work ongoing, a lot of targeted work ongoing by local officers, but also in conjunction with our national specialist units as well. And we'd certainly hope that over the coming months and the next 9 months or so, there will be further arrests. We will actively target those who are pushing drugs within Midlothian. That's a healthy figure to see that going up. And the one bit that I have noticed in an increase is in terms of cannabis cultivations. There's lots more intelligence coming through, and we've seen more and recovered more in terms of cannabis cultivations. And the big point I want to make is that whilst it's good to remove the cannabis cultivations, and detect those who are growing their own, there is a massive public safety element in growing cannabis cultivations within the dwelling houses, and it's particularly relevant to our colleagues within the fire service, who will know You know, the bypass and the electricity and the systems that they use generates a lot of heat, and it is a real public safety issue. So when we do get intelligence about cannabis cultivations, it becomes a priority for us to act upon that and do the enforcement stage for it. But I've certainly noticed an increase in terms of the amount of intelligence and information that's coming through, which is good, and that needs to be encouraged because the people in our community hold the key to this for us. Lastly, moving on to housebreaking. Again, a particular challenge, and for members who were here last year, it was quite an easy ride for me coming here in terms of the reduction in dwelling housebreakings that had been last year, but this year's not been quite as easy, and you'll see we are off target in terms of the numbers wise, where there's been 35 house break-ins in that first quarter, which was up from 18 last year to date. But I do have to put this into context that last year was a very, very good year in terms of that. The 3-year average is 27, so I do still acknowledge that we are above the 3-year average, but it puts it into slightly better context. I think those who read the media will be aware that there is a particular issue, and we're being hit with groups, both within Midlothian, our counterparts and neighbours in east and west, but in particular our neighbours in the city of Edinburgh, where we are aware there are a number of different groups who are operating. We're working very, very closely with our colleagues in the city of Edinburgh, have specific operations to target these individuals whose primary drive is to actually steal vehicles. They will actually break into houses, to steal car keys, to then try and take the vehicles off the driveway. That is their particular modus operandi, their way of doing things. We do know we've had a lot of success when we move across into the detection rate, but for me it's all about trying to prevent it. It's about prevention, because for every time there's a victim, and it's to try and reduce victimisation and ultimately make Midlothian the safest place we can be. I can give members assurance that this is a real priority area for us. I have a specific initiative within Midlothian, and if I can balance in terms of the numbers in terms of our dwelling house break-ins are up this year, the numbers for our sheds have dropped quite significantly. However, I'm still alive that there is still far too many sheds being broken into, so I'm tackling housebreaking in its entirety in Midlothian, and I have a special initiative, Operation Bistra, up and running, and we will continue to do that over the next 12 months to try and make significant inroads in reducing these numbers further. But the detection rate side for it is healthy, but I would rather see us having less victims. But when we do have a victim, it's always nice to lock up the bad guy. And lastly, moving on, you'll see we've put in the table in terms of complaints, and whilst one is one too many, I suppose the nature of the beast is that yes, we do get complained about, but in terms of, you can see that we're actually below the averages and things in terms of the number of complaints that we have. But it's a watch and brief, and it's one that we do look into, and we look for any trends, patterns, or anything, themes that's emerging that can be done in terms of any training needs or developmental needs within our officers. And on that note, before I move on to the Community Policing Team report, I'm happy to take any questions that members may have.
Thanks to the Chief Superintendent and Chief Inspector for that report. Any questions or comments? Councillor De Wink.
Well, first of all, I'm well aware from the media what a battle the police has got to fight, both with the media and the bad press that they receive. But it's encouraging to read all these pieces of news. I was on that road where the death occurred and the road was blocked off. Immediately, it was a young boy on a motorbike going far too fast. I know dreadful when it happens, and it's heartbreaking. Every day I pass the flowers that are left on the wall for this, and it reminds me of this awful thing. On the housebreaking thing, you know, this is very depressing, and so much is from cars that are taken from front door. But what I cannot understand is that the police is as a whole not going to work with manufacturers that you can have for £100, you can have a chip in your car, and I cannot grasp it, why that is not universally done, not just for cars, but for, I've now, since we had our quad removed by Mr. Lawson, who still hasn't appeared in front of the judge, we have chipped everything on our farm, and I think this is the way forward, because that will make your life so much more simple. Yesterday I had a walk around with John Blair and Ricky Moffat around Mayfield, where there's quite a lot of vandalism still, and there are problems there. It's one of the more deprived areas in Midlothian, and I feel that we can, as a council, help a lot by getting rid of garages and the like that are causes. They are no longer used, but they need to be knocked down, and we will address that as well, because we, as a council, ought to try and help the police as much as possible.
Can I just remind people that we shouldn't be naming people who are due to go up in court? Okay, thank you.
It's fact. It's in the public domain.
It's not a fact. It's not been tried yet. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Provost. Just a couple of minor things. The number of complaints about the police, can you possibly give a bit more detail on the kind of complaints? If it's a police officer not turning up for a certain amount of time following an incident, then that's understandable given the pressures you're under. If it's complaints against the behaviour of policemen, then I'd be a bit more concerned about that. So if you can maybe give a bit more information on that. The other thing I was going to ask about is parking, car parking, and I know that it's obviously a low-level crime. It's not something which I want you to give priority to, but it is an issue which comes up time and time again, specifically complaints from constituents, but also it's something which has been brought to council, that the possibility of decriminalised parking coming to Midlothian, the fact that we now have only one traffic warden who could disappear altogether by March of next year if there's no extension agreed, and it could take us up to 3 years to introduce some sort of replacement mechanism whereby traffic wardens are introduced, at least 18 months, so there could be a gap where we have no enforcement at all from traffic wardens. I noticed that going through the figures here that parking doesn't seem to come within any of the targets. It's not really dangerous driving, although it can contribute towards sort of school children, for instance, running out into the road if they can't see. It doesn't really look as if it's something that is monitored in terms of figures. So it worries me that this is something that the message is going out to people that they can park wherever they want. Nobody's going to check on them. There's no statistics kept. And that's the message I'm getting from people. Oh, the police don't care, are the words I frequently hear. So maybe some reaction to that.
Thank you. Well, taking the first point about the complaints and the nature of those complaints, you'll note this is the first time that we've actually been able to include these figures, which is part of that national kind of standardisation of recording. I was going to offer to the board the head of professional standards could come at a meeting of your choosing to actually to speak about any trends within those figures and how indeed this area compares with other areas of Scotland. I don't have the breakdown of the types of allegation. You'll see that the number of allegations exceed the number of complaints, so that indicates that one complainer could obviously be, have concerns about more than one issue within a complaint. But I can get that for you and bring it back. My own knowledge of the day-to-day business that comes to the division for complaints, it's more quite a general sort of a category of irregularity and procedure. I do look at complaints very carefully for the reasons you say.
that if it's the behaviour of officers that is of the greatest concern. Obviously systemic things are also concerning, but I'd be particularly concerned if officers were being rude to somebody, or not dealing with them professionally, sensitively. Certainly when you put these figures against the figures we have about user satisfaction and the random calls that we make to check on how members of the public have found the service, the levels of satisfaction with the way in which officers deal with incidents still continues to be high. It's over 90%. I will find out more information. With regards to the parking issue, I know that the Council has written formally to Police Scotland, and that the Assistant Chief Constable for the East of Scotland I spoke to this morning, and is planning to come and have a meeting with the Council about that issue of the provision of traffic warden service, because as you'll know, that is a decision that isn't a local decision. That was something that was made at the advent of Police Scotland, and areas have been adjusting and reacting to that in varying ways since. It is fair to say here that the likelihood of sustaining traffic warden service is very small. It doesn't exist in almost any area of Scotland, and it is a case of working out the timing of a transition to some form of deregulation. But in terms of local policing and the extent to which it troubles local people, that again is a big issue for us locally, because the community confidence is the thing that we very much want to preserve and build. The parking does feature as a local priority at the lower level, the multi-member ward level priority reports, and police officers will still very much deal with inconsiderate parking, or parking that causes obstructions to people, wheelchair users, or buggies, prams and other road users. Where there is an issue is about the use of police officers to enforce timed parking bays, and that function that to date traffic wardens have provided. But it's a national issue. It is one the Council has properly highlighted to the senior team in Police Scotland, and there is a meeting being arranged in the very near future.
Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, thanks very much. That's reassuring. Just on the subject of the parking, one issue which does come up time and again is the issue of parking near schools. And we all know the schools go back tomorrow. So I'm wondering, do you have anything in place to do a sort of blitz? Because this has been mentioned before, has been quite successful. That in the first few days after the schools open, get the police presence around the schools. I know that there are lots of schools and possibly not enough officers, but something like that, which would maybe be able to send the message out that for the rest of the term at least they should behave.
Yeah, Councillor, I can give you an assurance that there are plans in place. Next week sees the start of the Road Policing Vulnerable Users road campaign, and part of that is identifying issues round about schools, and we have a planned and structured diary in place that will cover virtually all schools. Will get looked at in some point or another, and certainly it's part of my article as well in this month's Advertiser, where I'm actively encouraging parents that can to walk or cycle, and for those who do take their vehicles, is adhere to what the parking regulations are, or be prepared for the consequences. But yeah, we have got a plan in place that will last for about 7 or 8 days in those initial periods.
Margaret.
It was just to give a quick update about the adult concern form situation. We're actually running a pilot now whereby the police and social work, community care social work, and crucially health are getting together twice a week at the public protection team to go through the forms before they're actually sent to the social work department here. And the same thing's happening with East Lothian. And it's basically to try and prevent some of the forms that don't need to come to social work coming, and also, really importantly, to give some forms directly to health, because at the moment police don't have a link in health that they can send adult concern forms to, and that's been a real gap. So it's meant that all the forms have been coming to social work, and social work have then had to send quite a large proportion of the time to health because there's no direct route. So so far it seems to be working quite well. It's running until the end of September, and then obviously we'll look at it and whether, you know, in terms of whether we continue or whether after that there's a direct route from police to health, if that's the most relevant agency that the form should be sent to. So it's just to give that update.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Chief Inspector, will you carry on?
Okay. Yeah, Chair, just moving on to the Community Policing Team Midlothian Activity Summary. Firstly, we took cognizance, Councillor De Vink, of the acronyms, and hopefully we've tried to add and expand in the first time they're used in terms of the context-wise for you in this one, and we also changed the colourings as well. You'll notice that the positive is now green and the negatives are back to red as they should be. Just a couple of observations in terms of the figures. Is I just want to highlight in terms of the drug, when we spoke earlier on about the searches, in terms of the weapon searches and the drug searches, I think you'll find in there, you know, we're sitting about 26% positive return in terms of drugs searches and 25% in terms of weapon searches, which again alludes to the fact it's very much intelligence-led, targeting the right people at the right time, as opposed to just random searches that are taking place, which is a good thing there. And I just want to move on to actually highlight some of the work that the team have been undertaking. In particular, I made reference to the cannabis cultivations, and you can see in there's quite a lot of drug work has been done by the team, and a significant recovery on the 18th of May. In there, the cultivation of 303 cannabis plants recovered in one particular cultivation, and strong links. When we made links there around about serious and organised crime, it was quite concerning for us. Vietnamese males were found to be the residents in there, and that's certainly been followed through in terms of the links and the bigger picture of that. But a substantial recovery there, about £70,000 worth just in one recovery in there. Other aspects of it, a highlight just in the sort of the preamble in there about the youth disorder that continues to exist, and about the Dalkeith campus and the patrols, and about Waterfall Park, New Battle Golf Course, and also in the John Clark Estate up in Pennycook. These feature regularly within our weekly TAC process, in the partnership TAC, and they will continue to be patrolled, high visibility patrols. There has been that right through the summer months, and that will continue as we go forward. But suffice to say that our team are busy. They're very, very busy. They're working with their community policing teams that we have under the new shift pattern to try and maximise the number of officers available. And I have identified in using when new start probationers, probationary constables. I've placed 2 probationary constables within each team, because I think it gives them a really good start to their police career. Proactive, they're getting to see inquiries through from start to finish, and I'll continue in that vein just to make sure that, one, it enhances and gives them a good understanding of what the funded officer's role is, but 2, I think it affords them a really, really good start in their policing career, and that's certainly my intention for new recruits that come on in the future. I will enhance the funded officers through utilising them through the funded teams, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions or comments on that? Councillor De Vink.
Yeah, I received the other day from a community planning for Midlothian called Midlothian Moving Forward, Midlothian Community Safety, and some of the figures in that are just still giving me great concern, and I'm quoting because really relevant to what we are talking about, that particularly in the last year, sexual crimes of 50 girls that were under 16 years old and 43 adult women were all victims of sexual crime in Midlothian. And Midlothian is well above the national average on that front. And also another piece of rather worrying thing is that alcohol represents 25% of all crimes, according to this paper, 25% of all crimes committed in Midlothian were alcohol related. And again, this is well above the national average. So probably it's worth highlighting that. I don't know whether you're familiar with this particular document, but it's quite an interesting one.
Is that the strategic assessment that you're looking at? Can you see? Can I have a quick look?
Yeah, Chair, just in terms of in relation to sexual crime, absolutely we're alive to all sexual crime, and we have obviously the development of specialist units who deal with such matters. In relation to the violent crime, and yeah, we absolutely acknowledge is that alcohol has a part to play, but as we alluded to earlier on in the report, what we are seeing is that the number of alcohol in the part that it has to play is reducing. And what I will say in terms of that's a 25% figure in violent crime, absolutely it is. But violent crime is also reducing within Midlothian, which is a positive picture. We'll no get away from the fact is that it absolutely does have a part to play in it. We make no bones whatsoever, and that is why we continue with focus. We will target known offenders. We're working very, very closely with licensees and off sales in terms of trying to reduce the availability and also the consumption element through education-wise. But absolutely on top of that, we are aware of it as our partners, and we work very, very closely with partners within the Community Safety Unit at Midlothian Council.
Did you
Yeah. I'll just clarify what that document is. That's a Citizens Panel survey, which is setting the priorities for future years. The summary that's included at the start of the Citizens Panel has been taken from the summary at the start of the strategic assessment. So that information is correct. It's from the police and partnership analysts. So it's just a wee summary of the strategic, which is on the agenda later.
On a more positive note, can I just say that I'm really thrilled that when I turned up last week at the Community Council at Mayfair, that a police officer was present and that she sat through the whole proceedings from beginning to end. Wonderful. That's what we need to see more of.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. We now move to item number 7, which is the HM Inspectorate of Constabulary in Scotland. And is it Chief Superintendent Emery is leading on that.
Thank you. It's really just for information of members that this is as it says, it's the annual scrutiny plan. It gives some context about the inspection regime and explains what the role of Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary in Scotland is. There actually isn't anything planned for this area. You'll see that Edinburgh is undergoing an inspection at the moment, but there's nothing planned in the near future for this area. It was just for information.
Okay, thank you. We now move to item number 8, the local plan performance report for Midlothian. And
thank you, Chair. I'm going to cover the quarterly performance report. I'll talk about the 6 key performance indicators first and then move on to some detail about partnership. On to page 4 of the performance report, the 6 key performance indicators are listed at the top of the table. You'll note that all accidental dwelling fires and accidental dwelling fire casualties, fatal and non-fatal, are shown a positive trend. However, there are negative trends associated with the other 4 indicators that I'll discuss as I work my way through them. So first, all accidental dwelling fires. It's very encouraging to see a continued downward trend in accidental dwelling fires. It's one of the key focuses, obviously, of the service, and continues to show the success of our preventative activities, a lot of which is associated with our home fire safety visits, detailed in the actions on page 7. Talk about 242 home fire safety visits during this period. 84 smoke detectors have been fitted. Within Midlothian, East Lothian and the borders, we're looking at enhancing our home fire safety checks to cover other areas that may lead to improved community safety. But we're currently working on identifying what those risks might be with partners. So positive trends with accidental dwelling fires. On to the reduction of all accidental dwelling fire casualties. Again, a positive trend. On page 9, you can see highlighted we're down to 1 casualty in current quarter, or the quarter I'm reporting on. Again, home fire safety visits are very important within this, and we are targeting loan occupancies. We have a list of relevant premises that we're working our way through. We find that fire service completed a fatal fire analysis for 2014-15 and identified that one of the main contributory factors, in fact the main one, was loan occupancy. So by targeting those households within this area, we're hoping to reduce that further. But a very positive trend. On to the reduction of all dwelling fires, all deliberate fires excluding dwellings. This is what we term primarily secondary fires, so fires that are in the open, sometimes maliciously lit, or they could be fires within derelict properties. The graph on page 11 of reduction of all deliberate fires per 10,000 population shows that we're broadly following the trend of the rest of Scotland. Disappointingly, we're slightly ahead of the East as a whole, and also Scotland. I think this reflects to some extent the antisocial behaviour increase that was reported on by my police colleagues, and I know we work very, very closely with the police in addressing antisocial behaviour. I'll come on to the partnership section. I'll talk about some of the further work that we're doing to address antisocial behaviour. But primarily this number of deliberate, as we call them, secondary fires was linked to a period over the Easter holidays, coinciding with a period of good weather, which often leads to an increase in such fires for us. The most effective way we see as dealing with such fires, often set by young people of school age, is to engage with the schools. Getting time in schools is very difficult for services. However, we formed a link with a school police officer allocated to schools within the area, and that's been very successful. That was achieved through working with the police at the TAC, and we're beginning to get into the schools to deliver that message. There was also an instance of fire setting at a derelict property within Mayfield that had the potential to spread to other buildings. As a result of that, the service engaged with the owners or those responsible for such premises in the area and reinforced the need to focus on security in derelict buildings. As I say, we're just above the Scottish average on that type of fire. We do anticipate a reduction. Looking at the figures to date in this quarter, we anticipate a reduction from them and see it as a spike that was linked to holidays and good weather, and we're actively engaging with the police and other partners to address the antisocial behaviour that's caused that. Moving on to road traffic collisions. Special service RTCs, again, it just shows the nature of the cross-service nature of these issues and the need for effective partnership working. It's the same figures pretty much that are reported on by the police. It is a concern that in Midlothian, again, we're slightly ahead of the Scottish average. We are working very closely with our colleagues to address these issues. I think we've already covered, or for the service, a slight replication of what the police have already reported on, but we had 9 minor injuries, 2 significant injuries, and tragically 1 fatality in the area. On to special service casualties. The service, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, is undergoing a change in the service we deliver to the public. We're focusing more on medical emergencies, response to medical emergencies. We also work closely with partners on gaining entry into locked-fast premises, which could result in a casualty from a special service. Often we find the occupant has become unwell and we're called to gain access to release that occupant. We're also responding to calls within the area from the ambulance service on out-of-hospital cardiac arrests. We carry defibrillators, and when the ambulance service deems it that we're the closest resource, they can mobilise us to deal with these incidents. We also have a very positive partnership within Midlothian on the rapid response team to deal with falls in the home that again can lead to an increase in special service casualties. So it's actually an indicator for us at the moment. It's almost a contra-indicator. The increase in casualties that I'm reporting on are largely due to a broadening of our role within the community, which will mean we'll come into contact with more casualties of this nature, but also it's improving the service that we deliver to the public and ultimately the safety of the communities in Midlothian. The reduction of false alarms, which is the next indicator. Unwanted fire alarm signals may seem insignificant in that they're not actual fires that we're responding to, but they draw on our resources. If we're attending an unwanted fire alarm signal, our resource is not available to deal with a significant incident that may be occurring elsewhere. So it is a real focus for us. As a result of that, we're developing within Mid, East Lothian and the Scottish borders an unwanted fire alarm signal reduction plan. We're also working through a new policy the service has implemented. It's a sort of 4-step policy, and we engage with premises where we're having this type of instance on a repeated basis. One of the things we're doing nationally, it may seem a small thing, but we're having a campaign to provide covers for break glass call points. We often find this can be an issue in schools, not always malicious. For example, during the summer holidays, they had a deep clean of some of the schools using the floor buffers. We had a number of occasions where the operators bumped into call points and set the fire alarm signals off, so we can reduce the impact through the provision of covers. And that's just one such activity that we're undertaking. Our fire safety enforcement officers are engaging face-to-face with premises where we've identified it's a significant issue. Our preventative activity is covered on a couple of graphs. Appendix 1 shows that we're bang on target at the moment. There was a slight dip in April, but we're back onto target for the number of fire safety enforcement audits, and we're above target on home fire safety visits. We had a campaign in Scotland where we'd identified an increase in the number of fire fatalities over the course of the year. This wasn't an issue in Midlothian. However, there was a Scottish-wide campaign to target those most at risk from fires, and we fully engaged within that, undertaking a number of media activities. If I could talk a little bit about the partnership working. As I said, we are involved in youth engagement. A lot of this, again, my police colleagues talked about effective work at a local level. And that really is what's happening in Midlothian. The agencies are working very closely together, particularly as part of the weekly TAC teams, but in other areas that I'll cover in this report that shows at a local level the services are working together very effectively to drive down risk to communities in Midlothian. So we have youth engagement, we have a community action team. Operational personnel from Dalkeith have been involved in numerous events, 2 challenge projects, 2 cool down crews, which is weeks that we run for young people who have behavioural or confidence issues. I think we dealt with 16 individuals over the course of the quarter. We have an ongoing Phoenix programme that's once a week, engaging with youth within the community. We had a visit to Woodburn Primary School. 60 children were spoken to as part of a programme called People Who Help Us. It's run by the schools. We had Newton Grange Family Safety Week and Water Safety Week. You see there's a lot of issues around water safety across Scotland, so as well as dealing with prevention with fire, as a partnership we're focusing on water. We had a visit to IKEA to support Child Safety Week. We provided careers input at Beeslack High School. A local authority liaison officer attended the launch, along with others, of the Midlothian SMILE, or Support to Maintain Independent Living Effectively. A community firefighter attended an older person's consultation, which produced numerous home fire safety visit referrals. Local authority liaison officer continued to work with the MARAC. Again, this shows indicative of the partnership working going on in Midlothian. We had 5 enhanced home fire safety visits referred to us from a domestic abuse advisor. Fire is often used as a threat within instances of domestic abuse, and I think we're progressive within Midlothian, working very effectively with our police colleagues and getting referrals from them. Elderly and vulnerable people, all watches within Dalkeith working through the Midlothian Loan Occupancy Initiative that I referred to earlier on. It's a key vulnerable group at risk of fire. We're trying to organise access for partners to enable data sharing through our CSET programme. It's a programme designed around community safety and it will allow them to directly refer clients to us. Partnership working with the National Farmers Union, a walk around Sockland Farm with the police and wildlife agencies to talk about safety in a rural setting. Supporting the White Ribbon Against Violence to Women. We have a number of advocates within the service, again, working with partners. We've engaged representatives of housing associations who operate within Midlothian to secure referral pathways for vulnerable tenants. And as I referred to earlier on, we had the Week of Action to address rising fire deaths across Scotland, a number of partnership activities to secure referrals and media adverts in the Midlothian Advertiser and the EH50 magazine. And that concludes my report. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Provost. I'm just interested in how you engage with the school children, because going back to a long time now, when I was at school, we never had anything like this, but I would imagine that somebody coming in from the fire brigade and telling us how to prevent fires from happening in the house. I don't think I would have gone home to my parents and said it was the most exciting part of my day. It doesn't sound like something that's very easy to engage the interest of youngsters. I'm just wondering how you managed to address that challenge.
If I can pass that question on to my colleague, Group Manager McGrath, he works specifically within Midlothian and will cover the answer.
Yeah, thank you. Essentially, we have packages that are available that are specifically designed with curriculum for excellence. That covers various ways in which we'll deliver the message with regards to home safety, and it's simply taking a walking around the home, identifying hazards, allowing them to identify hazards in their own home, and then taking back the message to their parents. There's a recognition, however, that the younger persons will generally, there's always a possibility that they will put the flyer back in their bag and it will not be passed on to their parents. I don't think we can get around that, but what we can do is try to sell that message for them, you know, how important it is to actually deliver that message back to their parents.
Thanks. So just one other thing I was going to mention is about the false alarms. Now, this is a problem I have with statistics, and it goes back to the police statistics as much as your own. But with false alarms, if we double the number of fire alarms in people's houses, you'd probably double the number of false alarms. But there'd be an underlying good message there, because we want to be able to detect them. But obviously, the fire alarms, the false alarms, impact on your ability to provide the service. But I'm just wondering if your statistics should really be the number of false alarms as a percentage of the total number of alarms rather than an absolute number.
Yeah, absolutely correct, Councillor. That is the case. The unfortunate thing is we don't have those figures available. And the number of fire alarms is undoubtedly increasing. These figures particularly refer to those that are provided with a collector service, so they don't really refer to smoke detectors in people's houses. It's more businesses, and what we do find is that 89% of the signals we respond to are due to a system of faults with the system. Primarily it's the location of detectors, or it may be a particularly badly located break glass call point. It may be that premises don't realise that they're having the effect on us, and that for them it may just be a couple of calls over, say, a 6-month period, but it can lead progressively if you, spread that out across the area that we are attending an awful lot of calls. So we are working with the highest offenders at the moment, trying to reduce them. We work with fire alarm companies nationally. We engage with the business communities on a forum nationally to try and address these issues. You're absolutely right, spot on about it, unless it's a percentage of the fire alarm signal or fire alarm systems provided with Midlothian, it's not particularly meaningful for us. However, those figures aren't available for us to use. But we do, and against that backdrop, it may make the figures look better, but for us, it's a drawn-out activity, whatever the number of fire alarm signals are, and we need to address it and drive it down. There's also, associated with it a cost to the public. There's responding under blue lights, albeit with a limited response. So there are a number of risks behind this issue, which is why we're focusing on it. Just back as well, if I can, to what my colleague Tam was saying about the schools. We find that with the service, we do have a good relationship. We have a positive image within the community, and if we go to schools, school children are interested in listening to our input. Often we'll take along small firefighting uniforms. We have small, almost mock stations we can take along. We involve them in play activity. We have, we'll run through situations and scenarios with them. So they are very, very interested in the input we provide. And I think, it is something exciting for them. And for the fire service, we have that image of the fire engines responding to the fire, and quite an exciting image. Whereas behind that all, what we're trying to do is deliver that preventative message, which isn't maybe quite as exciting, but the hook we can hang it on with and draw the kids in with is that exciting image of the fire engine and responding to the fires. And also, we think of it like the sweets being positioned by the till at the supermarket, and the kids badgering the parents. And that's what we're trying to achieve with our fire safety message, so that they're going home and badgering the family. And it's a long-term strategy that the fire service has implemented, targeting the children so that they'll be safer as adults, but also they'll be able to influence their parents.
Councillor DeVink.
Yeah, on page 7 or 55, up to page 17 or page 65, you have a little graph that says YTD incident, year-to-date incident, and I see the target, and surprisingly on page 7, the target is going upwards, while all the others are going downwards. But we are out of the 6 examples, 4 you're well away of the target. Could you just highlight a little bit what the target means and what we could really expect in the future?
Certainly, these targets are set nationally. It's primarily 10% reduction year on year that we're trying to achieve, and that's been passed on to these targets, to our figures. So that's what we'd hope to achieve with the planned reduction nationally. Now, in how this translates to the 17 local areas we have in Scotland is that some of these targets may be more of an issue in some areas than others. For instance, fire casualties may be higher in somewhere like Glasgow than they are in Midlothian, so there will be a greater opportunity to reduce the figures within those areas. Also, that the number of incidents happening are more statistically significant. What we find within Midlothian is that we've we have low figures in relation to this type of incident, and any slight fluctuation can lead to a significant change in the target. And I think what we're doing is we're analysing all these incidents, the 4 targets that are currently off. We're looking at the reasons behind that, as I say, with secondary fires or accidental fires outside the dwelling as an example. We're specifically analysing when they occurred and where they occurred, working with police colleagues to address antisocial behaviour and gaining entry into schools to deliver that message to the young people.
There's 2 points I would like to raise. Regarding the break glass rate, when I was an electrician at Queen Margaret College, when a break glass was broken, it was always vandalism and not because a fire had been detected. Surely now, with the amount of different types of detectors that we have, we should do away with break glasses now, surely. I mean, is there ever any time you attended that break glass was actually a real call rather than it being detected through some other means of detection?
I think 9 times out of 10, probably less than, or sorry, more than that, it's due to either it's malicious act or it's accidental breakage. And that's the case with, as I've talked about the figures for unwanted fire alarm signals, 9 times out of 10 it is down to a fault within the system. However, the risks are such that we can tolerate that demand on resources, because if it is a fire, then lives are at risk, and primarily break glass call points are located within premises where there is a significant life risk, either a sleeping risk, school, hospital, etc., that type of premises, a lot of office environments. And I suppose we have false alarms due to failures of or issues with the fire alarm systems. Likewise, it may be that a fire can develop in a location where there isn't a detector, that maybe it's a human being that is the first thing to come across that fire. It's the detector of that fire, and they can break the break glass call point. It is a concern that it's a drain on our resources, but I think on the 10% or less of the occasions where it is an actual fire that's being detected and we've been notified through a break glass call point, then it's worth the 90% that are false alarms.
Sorry, just to add to that, with regards to I take the point wholly about do we sometimes go over the top when we have all these detectors in buildings. We also have break glass points. There is a reason for that, is there's a requirement under the sector-specific guides to actually have a bit of both. Unfortunately, what comes with the break glasses is, as Mr Perry states, it's probably 95% are false alarms due to malicious breakage. I certainly have been to incidents where break glasses have been utilised as maybe a backup to the smoke detector being actuated, or indeed an individual himself has known there's been a fire before it's been detected and smashed the glass. So.
I have no objection to the fire brigade reacting to false any alarm, because it could be the system, and that's acceptable. But when most of the calls are made because people just deliberately or accidentally break the glasses, and we have, as I say, I'm no complaining about the amount of type we have. It's just that to say that we have so many of these types now, I'm just wondering. You're obviously saying break glasses shouldn't be done anyway, so I'll take your professional guidance on that.
I should probably add that a lot of the false alarms due to faults with the system are, or primarily the main cause is incorrectly located detectors, and that can be resolved through engaging with the occupiers. Break glass call points are an issue, but within the totality of unwanted fire alarm signals, they would be a smaller issue. It's potentially the use of the premises, for instance, toast being cooked within premises, can often lead to signals going off. There's debate about whether that's a fire or not a fire and that smoke's been produced. However, it is primarily, I would say, the inappropriate location of detectors, and we can resolve that through liaison with the occupiers when we've identified it's an issue.
The other point I was going to raise was, as Councillor DeVink pointed out, we have 2 green markers and 4 red ones on your indicator. Surely your special service casualties, that should be a green, because that's indicating that you're expanding your service to the community, and therefore isn't it a red because you're getting called to things that you're now getting called to rather than what you did before.
I think you may be right, and our attendance at medical emergencies is quite a recent occurrence. You know, it's not something we've previously been involved in. However, our Inspector of Fire Service had produced a report that detailed that the service should become more involved in medical emergencies. As a result of that, we're receiving more calls from the ambulance service, and we're in fact piloting a response to out-of-hospital cardiac arrest in East Lothian and the Borders in the near future, which will be a specific and formal pilot with the ambulance service and the community. So this change in our attendance at special service, this expansion of our role, is only a recent occurrence, and I think we will give cause to reflect, or it's given us cause to reflect on that indicator. Is it a positive or negative? It's always going to be off at the moment, given our increasing role in this type of emergencies. We're seeing many more responses to out-of-hospital cardiac arrests and slip, trips and falls in the home. So it's something we'll take away from the meeting and reflect on.
Thank you. Anything else? No. Okay, we move to item number 9, the Community Justice Update Report. I'm getting that from Rosie. Okay.
Thank you. So this report presents an update on progress towards developing the new Safer Communities and Shadow Reducing Reoffending Partnership, which we obviously approved at the last meeting. It also provides a copy of submitted partnership responses to the Community Justice Bill and Financial Memorandum public consultation exercises. These responses were pulled together by the Community Safety Delivery Group on behalf of the partnership because there wasn't time to get them up for approval before the deadline to the consultation. So key points from the report, the new arrangements that we agreed at the last meeting, they've now been signed off through the community planning structure and at council. We've recruited a new planning officer who is due to start in the middle of September. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that, Steve, who's sitting across there. We've also written and graded an analyst job description, which has not yet been recruited, but that will be coming up soon for recruitment. We've held meetings with new partners. We started work on the interim plan, pulling together a skeleton for that. We've also been looking at the remit for the board and how the board will operate from the next meeting onwards. So that's looking at the delicate balance between the requirement for the council to scrutinise the police and fire plans, but also the requirements through the community justice national arrangements for us to meet as a partnership and for people to have equal roles around the table. So we're looking at different models regarding how we can kind of meet both those obligations, and it may be that some of them are separated into different meetings, or it may be that we do it all together. So we're just currently doing that, and we'll obviously need to try and get that up and approved either before the November meeting or at the November meeting. So that's just something that we're looking at the moment. And also we are planning on holding a workshop which will be setting, we need to look at dates for it, but ideally that'll be around October time, and what that will be is getting all of the partners around the table and looking at each partner's role in terms of reducing reoffending. So we'll be planning that. That's the key points of the report, and what I'm asking here is for the Safer Communities Board to just note the development to date and note the consultation responses which have been submitted. And I'll open that up for questions, and certainly whether the CJA or Margaret would like to add any further comments.
As we can see, this report is just for noting, but is there any questions or comments? Margaret.
I suppose it's just to say that we are still waiting for 3 key documents from the Scottish Government, which will take us a lot further down this road. I think there's at the moment quite a lot of gaps in information because we haven't had sight of these documents yet. The 3 documents are the government's going to produce a national strategy for community justice, which is obviously going to be a kind of overarching framework for the new structure. They're also going to introduce a performance framework, which again we're still waiting for, but that's clearly going to have a big influence on the plan that we'll be pulling together for the end of January next year. Well, actually, we're hoping to pull that together for the November meeting so it can be agreed by the board and the partnership. And also we're waiting to find out about the funding formula, and I think there's still quite a lot of uncertainty, although we've been, although we've been given the funding for a planning person, which is Steve, as Rosie says, for the next 3 years. At the moment, we don't know if there's any funding beyond that period. And given the fact that we're going to be taking on a lot of the planning and analytical roles that the CJA previously held, there's a bit of lack of clarity about how the council or partner agencies are going to absorb those costs. So it's really just to say that we should, in a few months' time, hopefully, have a lot more information about how this is actually going to operate in practice than we do at the moment.
Okay.
First of all, I just wanted to commend the staff here, Rosie in particular, on the work that's been happening in Midlothian. It's as robust an approach as you can have in the absence of the things that Margaret has highlighted, and the timetable should put you on the front foot. But Margaret's made a very good point that some of the things will need to be known before we can flesh out the plan in a way which aligns it between national and Midlothian's priorities and approach. The CJ has just very recently been asked to run one of the national consultation events around the national strategy, so we're talking to colleagues in the Scottish Government about doing that in probably November. So this sort of engagement piece in terms of the content of that strategy is now, the planning is underway, and we'll hopefully have an opportunity to be part of that dialogue. But there's still a fair bit of work to do, and the timescales are very testing, I think, for our Scottish Government colleagues. So we'll need to just see how that goes, but it will have an impact on the decisions of the partnership here about just exactly how you want to frame your plan and what resources will be associated to that plan. The point has been made, I think, quite strongly in various submissions on the bill that the government needs to consider continuing the partnership support funding, which Margaret has mentioned, which is in place now for 3 years. So we're hopeful that, subject to governmental priorities and budgeting, that point will be taken on board and there will be ongoing funding beyond the 3-year time frame that's been confirmed just now. But we'll just need to wait and see what happens with that.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. Any other comments? Okay. Item 10. Midlothian Community Safety Partnership, Safer Communities Board. This is you again, Rosie.
So this report, I've just put this on the agenda for noting. Every 6 months, the Community Safety Partnership is required to submit an update to the Community Planning Working Group on the partnership's activities. So this is the update which I presented at last week's Community Planning Working Group. It just provides an overview of some of the key things the partnership's been up to over the last 6 months. I'll not read the report, obviously, out in detail. Of some of the highlights that we've already discussed is, the work with the licensing board and the forum around over-provision and, adhering to that policy. The housebreaking challenge that we've had and some work we've been doing on that. The positive project progress, which we've got a separate report up next, which Kevin's going to present on. And one of the other things I was going to highlight is the Community Safety Village, which we'll be holding during the Midfest Family Fun Day. So that's Sunday the 13th of September. We've got a dedicated zone at the Fun Day, and that's going to be Magda, the partnership development officer has been doing a power of work around that. So that's going to have different stands from all the partners promoting the key community safety messages in a fun way. So that's really going to be the highlight of our annual consultation and kind of engagement strategy that we have. So we've got that going on. That's the key points that I would highlight from that. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Any questions or comments on that? Okay. We move to item number 11, Midlothian Community Safety Partnership Funding 2014-15, evaluation report by Kevin Anderson. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. This is the annual report which we bring forward to the board in terms of the evaluation of the funding that has been distributed, and in this case it's for 14-15. As is detailed in the background section, there was prior commitments with ring-fenced amounts for the Plan for Place Fund, also in terms of the commitment to the Plus One project, which is reported to board on a regular basis, and the Tomorrow's Driver event, which is run jointly with East and Midlothian councils. As indicated beyond the table, there was considerable demand for applications totalling £68,000 when we had 41,000 available for distribution. Out of the assessment, there was, as in previous years, a co-production funding panel which was established to make the decisions about the distribution of funding. There was one project which was requested to give further clarification in terms of the alcohol and drug misuse, because that was one of the partnership's highest priority areas, and indeed that came forward and regarding some of the elements that needed clarification, and that project is due to start in September, October of this year. The funding criteria that the evaluation has been based on is detailed in section 3. It was in terms of the partnership's priorities, also in terms of targeting those resources across the National Anti-Social Behaviour Framework criteria, as well as the priority areas for the Council in Woodburn, Mayfield and Gore Bridge. The terms of the funding are also detailed on page 115 of your papers, and the actual evaluation information from the detailed projects is in section 3.2 across the respective projects and the outcomes as a consequence of the funding. Which then takes me to the recommendations, which is that the board is requested to note the evaluation report for 14-15, and I should indicate, because we're remiss to advise that the Community Safety Fund has now been incorporated into the wider council grant scheme, where of course there has been the reduction in terms of the available resources. So this would be the final year in terms of our reporting of evaluation, because funding criteria for this specific grant scheme would no longer be available, but incorporated into the Developing Communities Grant Scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. That report is just for noting. Any questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Item number 12, Strategic Assessment 2016 to 18. Report by Rosie Kendall.
Okay, this report presents the draft strategic assessment for 2016 to 18. This is a forward-looking and predictive document that the Community Safety Partnership produces on an annual basis. This does look ahead to the next 2 years, because we did agree that that would be the format of this document this time. The purpose of this document is to inform the strategy and our priorities from 2016 onwards. It's a substantial piece of work, contains a wealth of valuable information. It's been brilliantly written by the partnership analysts. The next step in terms of this document is that it has been used, a summary of it we've already discussed in the Citizens Panel questionnaire, which is currently out. So we're getting feedback from the public on our priorities. That will be discussed at the Community Planning Partnership Development Day in October, and then shortly after that we have got a dedicated priority setting meeting in the diary at the very start of November. What I'm asking for here is that the board notes the strategic assessment and agrees to ratify it via email following the EQIA of the wider community planning strategic assessment. So any questions, and if the board are happy to do that.
Any questions or comments on that report? Okay. On that note then, I wish you good morning and thank you for your